practice. It was found by Dr. Dubois, a Dutch anatomist, who went to Indonesia purposely to try to find missing links. He hired a bunch of prison convicts to go dig for him. He wasn't even there when they found it. What they found was an ape's skull cap, 3 human teeth, and a thigh bone found a year later 50 feet away. Dubois put them all together and said, we have a missing link here. You don't even know those animal bones go together. 3 teeth, thigh bone, and a skull cap from an ape. This was also going to be used in 1925 as evidence for evolution at the Scopes monkey trial. The Java man. The famous anatomist Virchow said, in my opinion, this creature is an animal, a giant gibbon. In fact, the thigh bone has not the slightest connection with the skull. Dubois hid the fact that he found 2 human skulls in the same area. He put those under his bed, under the floor. Like Edgar Allan Poe, you know, Telltale Heart, only this was Telltale Head. But there's no evidence of how man evolved at all. Fossil evidence for evolution for humans is fragmentary. Fossil evidence of chimpanzee evolution is absent altogether. There is no evidence of how chimpanzees evolved. But yet you have articles in the magazines all the time, you know, about evolution. Where are we going? I can tell you that. You're going straight to hell if you don't accept Christ. It's real simple. That's a no-brainer. In Skull, they were going to have a big display of the Orc Man, O-R-C-E, the Orse Man. They were going to have a big, party for the Orse Man they discovered, until they discovered it's actually a piece of a skull fragment from a donkey 4 months old. That was going to be the missing link. A dolphin's rib had been labeled as human collarbone in the museum for a long time. So somebody said, oh, that's a dolphin's rib. It's not a human collarbone. The Hobbit was just found here in 2004. The Hobbit was a little bitty, tiny human. Probably a result of secondary microcephaly dwarfism. Just a normal human, about 3.5 feet tall. There are people like that today running around the planet. Okay? There's a good book on the so-called cavemen, if you want to read this. If you're being taught this in school, get the book by Marvin Lubenow, Bones of Contention. Excellent book. It'll really put everything into perspective for you. The only missing link I can find is up between these guys' ears. You know, something is missing. Some of these professors spend all their free time digging in the dirt looking for bones. My dog does the same thing. But we don't make the taxpayers pay his salary while he does it, okay? Now, most states have laws requiring textbooks to be accurate. Florida has one, California has one, Texas has one, Wisconsin has one, Alabama has one. The law says textbooks should be accurate. Minnesota says teachers shall not deliberately suppress or distort subject matter. But Minnesota textbooks are still teaching all these as evidence for evolution, when all the ones in the red circle have been proven they cannot possibly be a missing link. By the way, the Minnesota textbook, and most textbooks now, instead of calling man Homo sapien, like we used to be called, they're now called Homo sapien sapien. Wow, what's that mean? Well, sapien means wise. So we're the wise man. See, the Bible says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And if you think your grandpa swung by his tail from a tree, you're a fool. Plain and simple, okay? This textbook says he's the daddy of us all. Oh, that's silly. You don't know he's the daddy of anybody. If you find bones in the dirt, you don't know it's the daddy of anybody. It's just the mother of all mammals from the Smithsonian. If you find bones, you don't know it's the mother of anything. See, if you find fossil in the dirt, all you know is it died. You couldn't prove it had any kids, and you sure couldn't prove it had different kids. And why would you think a bone you found in the dirt can do something animals today cannot do, which is produce something other than their kind? No fossil would count as evidence in a court of law, as evidence for evolution in a court of law. So where does the Stone Age fit into the Bible? Was there ever a Stone Age? Well, right after the flood, Noah couldn't tell his grandson to go to the hardware store and get him a shovel. There were no hardware stores. They had a devastated society, folks. They got off the ark and everything outside is destroyed. You have to totally rebuild civilization. They had a Gilligan's Island situation. You got a bunch of smart people. Well, Gilligan's Island did not have a bunch of smart people, you know, maybe one. But they're on this devastated planet. So they're going to have to rebuild from scratch, and you're going to make stone tools. Because that's much quicker than digging the iron ore out, smelting it down, and making an iron tool. You know, by the time it takes you 3 weeks to make your axe, you're going to starve to death, okay? So they're going to make stone tools. And people that are driven out of society are going to travel around in small herds and packs following migrating animals. And they don't want to carry 50 pounds worth of stone tools with them. It's quicker to make your stone tools on the job site. You follow the mammoths until you catch up with them, or the buffalo, and then you quick make your tools, kill the buffalo or the mammoth, and you butcher it and leave your tools behind and go on someplace else. And then we today find these stone tools and say, wow, look at this Clovis point. Wow, perfectly shaped, perfectly balanced. This guy is smart. This is an advanced civilization. And then they find another arrowhead that looks kind of crude, you know, and it's not chipped very smoothly. And they say, wow, this guy's pre-human. You're not quite as smart. You know, maybe you got the whole wrong perspective on that. Maybe the one that looks kind of crude was found by a guy who's in a bigger hurry because the mammoth is getting away, okay? He just doesn't have time to sit there and play with his arrowhead for an hour. He wants to go shoot the thing now before it runs off. So it might be an example of how much time they have to spend on it. Not at all an example of their intelligence, all right? But not only were people living longer before the flood, animals were too. And they were growing bigger. Probably much bigger. Here's a hornless rhinoceros, 18 feet tall. That's a big rhino. People say that's a prehistoric animal. No, did you know the word prehistoric was not even in the dictionary until about 100 years ago? We collect old dictionaries in our science center. If you have some old dictionaries from 17 or 1800s, we'd love to get them. I got a dictionary from 1766. The word prehistoric was not there. We got a dictionary from 1860. The word prehistoric is not there. No such thing as prehistoric back in 1860. There's a dictionary from 1892. The word prehistoric is still not there. See, there are things that are pre-flood, but there's no such thing as prehistoric. We have history from the first day. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. You can't go before that. So there's no such thing as prehistoric. But before the flood came, this canopy of water would increase air pressure, which would make things behave very differently. It makes insects grow much bigger. See, insects are limited on size based on the amount of oxygen they can get. Insects that live in oxygen-rich waters get 1,000 times heavier than those that don't. It has to do with the surface area to volume ratio. Without boring everybody for a half hour, the larger an insect gets, it has more skin, but not compared to its volume. The surface area compared to its volume ratio drops off, as you can see on the chart here. So as an insect gets larger, it doesn't have enough skin, because insects breathe through their skin. But giant insect fossils have been found, like this dragonfly with a 50-inch wingspan. How'd you like to hit one of those at 70 miles an hour? You take the bug deflector and the hood right off and join you in the front seat. Big dragonflies been found fossilized on this planet. Today they get 4 or 5 inches long, you know, not very big. Pre-flood, they were huge. Cockroaches get pretty good size today. We raise them in our museum in Pensacola, the Madagascar hissing cockroaches. But did you know giant cockroaches have been found, 18-inch long cockroach fossils? You didn't call Orkin in those days. You called the National Guard to come exterminate the house, okay? Giant fossil centipede, 8.5 feet long, was found. Grasshoppers, 2 feet long, have been found fossilized. You can make a meal out of those. Tarantula with a 3-foot leg span, fossil. 60-foot cattail fossils have been found. A donkey 9 feet high. From Texas, of course. Everything's bigger in Texas. Okay? Giant sloths obviously lived on the planet. Now you're going to be told that was millions of years ago. No, it wasn't. It was just before the flood came. Buffalo were found with horn spans up to 12 feet. Elk with 12-foot antlers. Some of you deer hunters are thinking, wow, that'll look good on the wall. How many of you go out and try to shoot Bambi's daddy? Come on, be honest, okay? There we go. Good, good. And eat them too. You know, fossil kangaroos have been found 10 feet tall. And fossil wombat, the size of a mini. There's a fossil of a guinea pig that was 1,500 pounds. That's a big guinea pig. Birds have been found 13 feet tall. There's an elephant bird egg. The one behind it's an ostrich egg, which is also huge. They find fossils of prehistoric goose that stood as tall as an elephant and weighed half a ton. How'd you like to have that for Thanksgiving dinner? Tell Tiny Tim about that goose. Yeah. Fossil beavers have been found 8 feet long. Here's a guy holding a beaver jaw from about a 7 or 8